2024 has been kind of a mid-year for animation, nowhere near bad, just more oftentimes than not underwhelming, with Inside Out 2 really being one of the only standouts up to this point, both critically and financially. Ultraman was good and so was Transformers 1, which is unfortunately underperforming currently. Yeah, Paramount is absolutely terrible at promoting their own movies, especially their original animation projects. So of course the best Transformers movie won't get half the attention the Bay movies will. What dark timeline are we living in where Madam Web makes it to production in theaters but a Batman Beyond movie probably won't? Man, I hate the system. Now, if we're gonna talk about DreamWorks specifically, which has technically already released 3 films this year, I refuse to talk about Bootleg Brain 2 any more than I have to. Kung Fu Panda 4 certainly exists, and Orion in the Dark, though obviously on a bit of a lower budget, was still strong enough in the writing department most of the time to be enjoyable. I get people being mad about the story within a story angle, which feels a bit sloppy at times, but the central relationship between Orion and Dark was warm and endearing, so yeah, I could put up with the rest of the flaws for that. And I know after dropping bangers like Last Wish and Bad Guys in the same year, everybody was like, DreamWorks is peaking and entering a new renaissance, and then Ruby Gillman and Trolls 3 released and everybody shut up. Yes, DreamWorks is still very much a mainstream studio that is prone to hits and misses, but lately when they hit hard. Which brings me to The Wild Robot, based off of the best-selling book by Peter Brown. I have waited for what feels like an eternity for this movie to release, and boy was it worth the wait, because it is fantastic. Of course, I never would have doubted Chris Sanders, who's behind masterpieces like How to Train Your Dragon and Lilo and Stitch, but this is some of his best work yet. Do you know how big of a statement that is? The movie follows a shipwrecked android named Roz, whose main objective is to assist anyone she can, which is a little more than difficult on an island full of vicious wild animals, but through her endeavors discovers a runt gosling named Bright Bill, who she has to raise and help fly by wintertime with the help of a wily fox. Now, one thing I've really been itching to talk about is how stinking beautiful the animation is. Improving on the unique painterly art style established in Last Wish, this movie feels like a moving painting at times. Like I literally wanted to stop the movie so I could frame some of the shots and put it on my wall. The character animation is smooth and fluid, and overall has a very warm and handcrafted feel to it, which I feel like we need more of in an era of animation that can still feel very cold and generic. For every Spider-Verse and Mutant Mayhem, we have a Minions or Marmaduke. Blah. And because the movie is set in nature, it really takes advantage of all the colors and beautiful grand landscapes you see in that type of environment. Again, I really can't stress enough just how good this movie looks, to where even if the story were trash, it would still be worth seeing on the big screen. But the story is actually well done too. The movie really develops Roz well. We spend most of the first act of the movie seeing how she adjusts to being in such a wild and unforgiving environment. She can't communicate with any other creatures, and they hate her. This was really interesting to me because in a lot of movies we see robots interacting with humans, and we all know how that usually ends. But seeing a robot interact with animals does add a fresh spin to it, made even more interesting by the fact that she can physically mimic them and eventually even understand them. Remember when people were getting upset when the second trailer dropped and were going like, OMG, why are the robots and animals talking? This is so disappointing. Okay, so not only do the animals talk in the book, and communication is actually a big theme in it, but also how is this different from any other animated movie that has come out in the last century? Talking animals and, well, characters in general have always been a staple in animation. And don't bring up WALL-E unless you're just gonna ignore the second half of that movie. This film is still like in my top 5 Pixar, but anyways, this movie never feels like it's trying to be cool and use hip lingo, neither does it have characters just run their mouth and say stuff for no reason. I mean, I really enjoyed Transformers 1, but let's be real, B talks way too much. Like that character who is clearly just there to appease little kids, but has very little substance overall. Interestingly enough, I think a big reason this movie is so great is because it respects the audience. It trusts that kids will be able to understand the more raw elements while still maintaining sweetness and tender sensibility. I don't think I've ever seen a family film with so much straight up death and distress that somehow still feels so optimistic and hopeful, especially when it comes to themes of family that Chris Sanders has basically perfected at this point, more specifically broken or irregular families. Here, Bright Bill is experiencing very familiar growing pains, feeling unsure about his capabilities, struggling to fit in, made even worse by the fact that he is a runt. But he does have a support system, a very weird one, but one nonetheless. What I really like is how it showcases the challenges and sometimes guilt that comes along with being in a misfitted family, which hits even harder when Bright Bill's backstory is revealed to him, like a surprisingly grim backstory. I didn't expect the movie to go there, but I'm glad it did. This leads to Roz feeling guilty about depriving her child of his family, and Bright Bill feeling betrayed and upset at her because of it. The message then becomes about how the past past is in the past, be grateful for the people you have around you now, and think about how different your life would be without them. This movie really reinforced to me just how delicate life is. Everything happened just so and just right to where we ended up in the place we are now. And though we also wish we could change what we did in the past or fix the mistakes, those are usually a big part of the reason we have the positive things we do in our life now. Because even from a dirt-covered grave, flowers can bloom and blossom. Y'all might want to write that one down. Sorry I'm getting a little existential. It's just I really connected with this movie. It covers so many different themes and life lessons and has a lot going on, but still feels incredibly grounded thanks to Roz and Brightbill's imperfect but very touching bond. In fact, I think it's the fact that it's so imperfect that makes it believable and investing. And of course, props to Lupita and Kit, who do an excellent job bringing these characters to life and making them feel fleshed out and nuanced. It's really cool to see a character like Brightbill have to put in the hard work to be better. Runs are like a very common trope at this point, but I feel like we don't always see them put in the work to be where they need to be. Here, he has to work twice as hard as everybody else to be successful, and I think that's another good lesson. Nothing in life comes easy. I'm looking at you, YouTube. Pedro Pascal is obviously doing his best Nick Wilde impression, which he pulls off really well. A character who is devious and humorous, but also surprisingly loving and even affectionate at times. Also, holy cow, the music is great. I never really thought much of Chris Bowers before this, granted I had only listened to his Space Jam 2 soundtrack, and I was like, it's okay, it got the job done. But man, his music in this movie totally won me over. It's powerful when it needs to be, but also subtle and tender. So yes, the soundtrack elevates what are already some pretty thrilling scenes. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, the movie has really good action too, especially during the third act where the colors and contrasts are turned up, so it really pops. And for any of you wondering, does it contribute to the now exhausting AI discourse, I feel like it has the framework for that discussion but never really goes too deep into it. The only moment that really made me worry about AI is when this weird unnerving tentacle robot comes to take Roz home and she says that she's morally neutral.
I am unfeeling, inflexible, and morally neutral.
That is a little bit terrifying, because AI doesn't have the human moral compass we have, so being morally neutral almost feels the same as having no morals at all. The morals that AI has is the morals that the creator has programmed into them, so what if they're bad morals? Anyways, I can't really think of a ton of big flaws, nothing that isn't compensated by everything this movie does great. The pacing isn't always perfect, so I guess that's a flaw, you know, if you want one. So yes, I loved it, and the more I think about it, the more I appreciate it. It's a movie that knows how to take just the right amount of inspiration from earlier movies like WALL-E and The Iron Giant, but still keep it fresh with new ideas visually and narratively. I really hope this movie does well at the box office. I mean, it's obviously already being well received by critics, but this movie's success would mean so much for the industry. Easily one of the best DreamWorks movies and currently the only movie making Inside Out 2 nervous for the Oscars next year. But once again, who cares about the Oscars? They're so dumb, I don't care about them. So yeah, just go see it, you won't regret it. Male bovine excrement. That's actually my favorite phrase now. So yeah, it was like one of the characters said it in the movie and I had to think about it and I'm like, oh, that's what he's saying. That's actually pretty clever. Yeah, I had an excellent time with this movie. It was really fun, it was really thoughtful, it was warm, it was heartwarming. I just really loved it, you know? I gotta watch it again soon so I can really peg kind of like my thoughts on it and like what I would give it as a rating. But yes, definitely watch it. When you guys do watch it, or if you already watched it, let me know what you thought about it. I will see you guys again soon for my next review. So yeah, bye.